take 6 of this video. It's that kind of day. Just nothing, I can't really get anything to go right for me. So hopefully this take I will like. I actually shot this entire video already, hated all of it, deleted it, and so now here we are. This week I am going to be talking about the original stories behind some of Disney's classic animated movies. And this time in particular, I'm going to be talking about Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, and Tangled, Rapunzel. So, a lot of stories that Disney has made animated movies of actually have pretty terrible origins. And I'm going to be talking about these over a series of videos, but these are the ones that I really wanted to do first. And I want to compare also some of the similarities. Like, Disney didn't just take a story and take the name of the girl and completely change everything. There are bits and pieces that are consistent. So I had fun finding those out too. So, a quick little sidestep about the Disney Princess franchise. Now, not every princess that Disney has ever animated is a Disney princess. So, for example, Anna and Elsa are not Disney princesses. Moana is not a Disney princess. Kida is not a Disney princess. The princess line, like capital P princess line, consists of 12 princesses. It consists of Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora, who is from Sleeping Beauty, Ariel, The Little Mermaid, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, Jasmine from Aladdin, Pocahontas, Mulan, Tiana, Rapunzel, and Merida. And when every princess is inducted into the franchise, she gets like a coronation at one of the parks. So only those 11 are the actual princesses, capital P princesses. So, and some of these princess movies are far better than others. I think Cinderella is, just since a classic, it's real good, kind of. And most people know that version of the Cinderella story. And, you know, like, girl's mother dies, her dad remarries, he remarries a woman who has 2 daughters, he dies, and then the wife, the stepmother, and the stepsisters are cruel to her. She wants to go to the ball when the king throws a ball for the son to meet a woman. They tear up the dress and don't allow her to go, blah, 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 blah. We all know this. Makes it to the ball anyway, falls in love with the prince. Prince goes around trying the shoe on everybody. And magically, when the shoe fits her, he recognizes her. That's how he knows it's her, by the shoe fits. And the original story is pretty close to on this one. I was actually surprised how close this was. I expected a lot more differences. So, the versions of Cinderella, I found out there's Cinderella's going back like 1,000 years, 2,000 years. Like, there's a couple of stories like in the BC era that are similar to this. But the one that seems to be the basis for the Disney movie is a Brothers Grimm story. So you know it's going to be lovely because it's the Brothers Grimm. And it's called Aschenputtel. I will be calling her Cinderella during the duration of this video though, because I can't say that with a straight face. So, in their story, there's a plague in Cinderella's village, and that's how her mom dies. Her mom contracts this plague, and dies. But before she dies, she begs Cinderella to stay kind. Like, no matter what happens to her, you know, be a kind person. Always. All that jazz. And so her mother dies, and she is buried on the property. And every day, Cinderella cries at her grave. And her father remarries. He marries a woman with 2 daughters. And they are, like, they're also beautiful in their book. You know, in the movie, because Disney loves to do this thing where ugly means you're evil and pretty means you're good, especially in the older movies. So Drusilla and Anastasia are really ugly in those movies, but in the original story, the stepsisters are also beautiful. And they take all of her dresses, all of her jewelry, and they just take everything from her. And they deliberately make messes that she has to clean up. You know the whole drill. And so one day, the father goes to like a fair, carnival fair sort of thing, and he asks the girls what they want. And so, like, one stepsister says that she wants pretty dresses, and the other one says that she wants pearls and fine jewelry. And Cinderella says that she wants the first twig that knocks off her feather's hat when he rides in. And her father makes good. He brings everything that the girls have asked for. And so Cinderella has this twig, and she takes it out where her mother is buried, and she buries it next to her. And it's now part of her routine. Every time she goes and she cries over her mother's grave, she cries over the twig. And her tears make this twig grow into this big, tall, beautiful tree. So now when Cinderella goes out to cry, she has this tree to shade her. And there's a magical white bird that starts hanging out in this tree and listens to what Cinderella prays for and starts bringing her and dropping down stuff that she prays for. It's usually like little things. But just like the movie, the king wants his son to be married off because he's getting older in his years and he wants to make sure that the kingdom's got a future. You know, gotta marry him off to a girl, get an heir and a spare. And Cinderella finds out about the ball, and of course she wants to go. Oh God, she wants to go. And so she asks the white bird if the bird can help her dress in silver and gold. And the bird brings her a dress. She goes to the ball. She dances with the prince. She realizes that she has to be home in time because she doesn't want the family to realize that she made it to the ball, because they did the same thing where they, like, oh, you can go if you finish your chores, and then they gave her an impossible list of chores. So the prince escorts her to the house, and she pulls a fast one on him and disappears. And that night is over, and she takes the dress back to the tree and gives it back to the bird. Now, in the book, the ball is like a 3-night party. It's basically a convention at the castle. And every night, she asks the bird for a dress. The bird gives her a dress. She goes to the ball, dances with the prince, and tries to come back in time to fool her parents and her sisters. Now, keep in mind, because he has escorted her, he knows where she lives. He doesn't know which girl it is, but he knows where she lives. And he is sick of her running away, so the third night, he has the entryway to the castle covered in pitch. Because he figures if she runs out into the pitch, she'll get stuck, and he won't have to chase her. Of course, we all know she loses the shoe and she runs off without the shoe. So, the prince says that he's going to take the shoe and he's going to put it on every woman in the kingdom in the movie. In the book, he knows where she lives, so there's only 3 women that he needs to try the shoe on. Big time save. And so he goes to the house, and what he does not know is that the stepmother coached the oldest girl to cut off some of her toes. So that when the prince comes by with the shoe will fit her, because part of her foot's missing. So she does that, she cuts off some of her toes, and the shoe ends up fitting. And it's all well and good. The prince has his girl with the shoe, and they start riding off. They take off towards the castle. Well, some magical doves fly down to the carriage where the prince and the stepsister are, and the birds tell the prince that he's been deceived and point out that she's bleeding from her foot. So he looks at her foot, sees that indeed she cut off part of her foot to deceive him, and he is mad and sends her home. Well, the next day, he goes back to the house and he tries the shoe on the next girl, because they're not telling the prince that Cinderella lives there. So he tries it on the second stepsister, and now this time, instead of cutting off her toes, since that didn't work for her sister, she cuts off part of her heel. Cuts off part of her heel. The shoe fits. So, again, they're in the carriage, they're racing off to the castle. The birds fly down, they're like, yo, dude, look at her feet. And he sees that she has cut off part of her foot. Prince is done with this bullshit at this point, he's done. So he goes back the third day and he's like, who else is here? I know there's somebody else here. And they're like, and her dad is just like, oh, well, we have a maid. And he's like, well, I'm trying it on her. So they reluctantly bring out Cinderella. And the minute Cinderella puts on the shoe, and in the book it's a gold slipper, not a glass slipper, which is so much better. You couldn't pay me to wear, well, I mean, depends on how much. You could not pay me to wear a pair of glass shoes and expect me to dance in them. But she tries on the shoe, and when she puts the shoe on, he magically sees that it was her that he's been dancing with this whole time. And so she agrees to marry him. And it's gonna be great, right? It's all gonna be good. Well, the stepsisters, because they can't just not meddle with things, the stepsisters beg Cinderella to be her bridesmaids. And Cinderella agrees, but Cinderella has not forgotten a damn thing that any of these women have done to her over the years. So she agrees to let them be her bridesmaids, but on the way to the church, Cinderella summons her dove friends, and the doves come down and they pluck out one of each girl's eyes. So now her stepsisters each have one eye, and feet they fucked up themselves. So the prince and Cinderella go in and get married, and when they come back out of the church, the doves are still there. And the doves swoop down and they pluck out each girl's other eye. So now these girls are blind for the rest of their lives and have fucked up feet for the rest of their lives. Lovely, lovely children's story, isn't it? Yeah. I think my eyeliner is drying out. So that is the original story of Cinderella. The story of Cinderella that's considered the original. Let's put it that way. Lots of things different. Also, can we talk about the fact that her dad has been alive the entire time? And allowed this? Like, allowed all this terrible treatment of her? Jeez, Dad. Fucking... Nothing like the dad in the animated or live action movie. So, that's Cinderella. The next story I want to talk about is The Little Mermaid. Ariel's original story. And this is another one actually that has a lot overlap with the original story. It was originally written by Hans Christian Andersen, who's a Danish author, who is, by the way, fun fact, referenced in Frozen 2. Just saying. And there's a statue, a tribute statue to The Little Mermaid in Denmark. So, the beginning of this especially has a lot of similarities. So the Little Mermaid obviously lives under the sea with her dad, and she has 5 sisters. 5 older sisters. And the girls are all a year apart. Damn, give Mom a break. And when each one turns 15, she's allowed to go up to the surface and look around, get a feel, you know, learn about what is above the waves. And so for 5 years, the Little Mermaid listens to these stories that her sisters tell her, and she is enamored. Like, she's obsessed. So her 15th birthday rolls around, and she's finally allowed to go up to the surface, and she can't wait. And when she goes up, she happens upon a ship that is having a birthday party for a young prince, which is exactly what happens in The Little Mermaid. And just like in The Little Mermaid, in the movie, a terrible storm kicks up, and it rocks the ship and throws the prince overboard. Well, the Little Mermaid rescues the prince, and she takes him to land, and she just so happens to take him right to his kingdom, and he winds up in at a temple, and a woman from the temple comes down and sees them, and she's got some ladies with her, and the Little Mermaid leaves the prince with her and goes back home. And of course, the prince never finds out that it was her. When she gets home, of course, she's totally smitten with the prince. When she gets home, she pulls good old Granny aside. And she asks if humans live a long time like mermaids do. In this book, mermaids live for about 300 years. And her grandmother tells her that human lives are much shorter than mermaid lives, but they have eternal souls that live eternally. So that while their physical lives are shorter, they live forever. Because they're souls, whatever. And the Little Mermaid is not happy with this. So she goes to a sea witch. Yep, sea witch. And she explains her problem to the sea witch. And the sea witch is like, I got a plan. And the sea witch agrees to make her a potion that will make her human. But she has to give the sea witch her voice in exchange. And she warns the Little Mermaid that when she drinks the potion, it'll feel like she's swallowing a knife. It'll feel like the knife is slicing her entire body. And she'll have legs, but her feet will always, every step will be painful. And her feet will constantly bleed. I don't know about you. I have never ever met a man worth having constantly bloody feet. But the Little Mermaid accepts this offer. She takes the potion. She goes up to the surface. And she goes to the temple where she left the prince. And she drinks the potion. And becomes human. Now, there's one small positive bit to this potion. And that is, if she can get the prince to fall in love with her, no voice, never underestimate the power of body language. If she gets the prince to fall in love with her and marry her, she will get a soul. Like what humans do. She'll have a soul, and she'll have a soul that can live eternally. Has to get the prince to fall in love with her. So she winds up at the castle, at the prince's castle, and he actually is instantly intrigued by her. She can't talk, but they become good friends. She's basically his favorite companion. She dances. She loves to dance even though it hurts, and he loves to watch her dance, so she dances for him, even though bloody feet and all that. And it's all going well. Well, the prince finds out that there's an arranged marriage to a girl from a neighboring kingdom, and he declines the arranged marriage because he says that he will only marry the woman who saved him, who he thinks is the one from the temple. Well, joke's on him and everybody else. The woman from the temple just happened to be the girl, the princess that he was supposed to marry. She was at the temple for princess stuff. And so she is the one who he thinks found him. And so he agrees to marry her. The marriage is announced. The wedding's announced. And it's going to be on a ship. And the Little Mermaid is devastated because she has given up everything. Mermaids live like 300 years. She's 15. She's given up 285 years of life, potentially, for this prince. So she's going to be a guest at the wedding because they're biffles. And she's distraught because she's going to die in like 6 hours. Because, oh, the prince didn't fall in love with you? Yeah, you're going to die at dawn the day after he marries somebody else. So she is hours away from death. Literally hours away from death. And just really, really sad. And her sisters show up. they too have talked to the Sea Witch. And the Sea Witch took their hair and traded them a knife, a special knife. And it turns out that if the mermaid takes this knife and kills the prince with it and lets his blood run on her feet, she can become a mermaid again. She can become a mermaid again, get the rest of her 300 years back, you know, have a life with her father and grandmother and sisters again, and get back what she gave up. Well, she thinks about it, but she decides that she can't do it. Like, she's looking at him, ready to stab him, and she decides that she can't do that. So as the sun is coming up, she throws the knife overboard, and she jumps overboard. And when a mermaid dies, they turn into foam on the sea. And so she throws herself into the water, and as she's dissolving, she's aware of this, as she is dissolving, she gets turned into a spirit by other spirits. And she is told that if she does good deeds for humankind for the next 300 years, she will be given a soul in exchange for her selflessness and her refusal to kill the prince to save herself. So, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between that one and the animated version. Like, the whole thing with mistaken identity, Sea Witch, exchange of voice. Like, that one, Disney really stuck pretty close to that one, considering that it's... So, the last one I'm gonna do for this video is the story behind my favorite princess movie. And my favorite princess movie is Tangled. So, we are gonna do the story behind Tangled. And I was super excited to look this one up because I didn't actually know a lot about the original story. Like, I knew a little bit of it, but I didn't know the full shebang. So imagine my utter joy when I looked it up and saw that it too is a Brothers Grimm story. Awesome. Fuck yeah. So it's a Brothers Grimm story. And this one is, I definitely see where they got the basis for the movie. So, it starts out with, there is a lonely couple, and they want a child. They're not royal, they're just everyday folks. And they want a child. And eventually the woman becomes pregnant. And you know how a lot of times women have real bizarre specific pregnancies or cravings when they're pregnant. Well, this woman sees some Rapunzel in the garden of the sorceress who lives next to them. It's right by the wall. She sees it, and that's all she wants to eat. That's all she wants, is this Rapunzel. And the husband doesn't really want to get it because they live next to a sorceress. But it's all that she will eat. It's all she wants. So he agrees to go get some for her. Sweet. And so he gets her some and he makes it for her. And I looked up what Rapunzel is in this case. And I can't say the Latin name. So it's that. Campanula rapunculus, something. And it's like a root vegetable. And he gets some, he makes it for her, and she wants more. So he goes back the next day and he gets some, but as he's scaling the wall to go back to the house, the sorceress catches him. And the sorceress is livid and yells at him for stealing from her and makes threats. And he just apologizes profusely, like, oh shit, like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And he explains why. And the sorceress is like, okay, I'll make you a deal. You can take this, and I won't do anything about it. But I want the baby when it's born. And the man is desperate and scared. And so he agrees. And when the girl is born, they give her to the sorceress. And the girl grows up kind of normal for a while. She does grow real long, pretty blonde hair. And when she hits 12 years old, she gets moved, the sorceress moves her into a tower. And the only way to get in and out of the tower is with Rapunzel's hair. There's no doors or anything like that. And so what you have to do to get up there is you shout up, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair so that I may climb the golden stair. And then Rapunzel throws her hair down out of the window and you can climb up. Bam, you're in the tower. Cool. So, you know, everything is, I mean, aside from the fact that she's locked up in a tower, everything else is kind of normal. Until one day, there's a prince riding through the woods and he hears her singing. And he's so entranced by her singing. And he can't figure out how to get, all he wants to do is get into the tower. So he looks everywhere for a door, stairs, something. And he realizes that eventually someone is going to have to come out or go in. So he hangs around and he waits. And sure enough, here comes the sorceress. She says the catchphrase. Rapunzel throws her hair out, lets her up, and now the prince knows how to get in. And so, there's a bobby pin down there. So he waits for the sorceress to leave, and he uses the catchphrase. And so he climbs up into the tower, he meets Rapunzel, they instantly fall in love, blah, blah, blah. Blah. Well, they have a couple of clandestine meetings. And everything's going fine until one day, Rapunzel goofs. She isn't thinking about what she's saying, and she mentions that her dress has gotten tighter in the waist. Because she's pregnant. She's pregnant. And she asks the sorceress, oh my God, why it's harder for her to lift up the sorceress than it is to lift up the prince. So of course now the sorceress knows that she's been letting randos up into the tower and she's livid. And she hacks off Rapunzel's hair and makes her leave. And she's like, bye, have a good life, go fend for yourself, get out of here. So Rapunzel leaves. Meanwhile, the sorceress still has her hair. So the prince comes back and he's like, hey, Rapunzel, let down your hair. So the sorceress lets down the hacked off hair. And of course, when he gets up into the tower, it's a trap. And she tells him that he's never going to see Rapunzel again. And she launches him out of this tower. And he lands in a thorn bush and is blinded by the thorns. So after that, he winds up just wandering. And he wanders and wanders and wanders for apparently a while, because by the time he finally hears Rapunzel singing, like, he hears her singing, and he, you know, he goes towards her voice, whatever, and she sees that it's him, and she, like, throws her arms around him and then starts crying, and her tears heal his eyes, and he's able to see again. And when his eyes are healed, he takes her and they go back to the castle. And in the meantime, she's had twins, because remember she was pregnant? So he has wandered at least between her dress getting tight and her having twins. That's how long he's been wandering. And like I said, he takes her back to the castle and they live happily ever after, blah, blah, blah. It's great. Perfect. So that one doesn't have as much in common with the original story as the other two do. But I definitely see with the whole thing with the, like, with the king and queen wanting a baby and then using the magic gold flower, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of, I see how they got from point A to point B on that one. So those are the only three that I'm going to do today, because I knew this video was going to be this long, at least this long. And I have the three picked out that I want to do next, but if there's one that you want to see that's really compelling, like, if you can say, hey, look into this one, because cool, this, and I'll look into it. I'll look into it. So, leave your favorite messed up story in the comments. I'll look into doing, I would like to do a number of these videos. Like, I don't want it to just be two. I'll do a couple if there's a good one. In the meantime, thank you for watching my silly little videos. And I will see you next week. Hopefully. Bye.